Good morning, everyone. I feel like I should have like the day and the time in the upper corner. Welcome to my stream. Today we're going to start off with, oh good, I did write it down. Guidepost number 5 from the book The Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown. Last time we read guidepost number 4. My handy dandy journal, got some cute pens. So number 5 is entitled Cultivating Intuition. I'll be posting this section of the stream. It might be the only section, but I'll be posting this section of the stream on my YouTube channel. If you're interested in rewatching, you can follow, subscribe, etc. to my YouTube channel there. But yeah, Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown. Cover is over there. So this is guidepost number 5, entitled Cultivating Intuition and Trusting Faith. And trusting faith. And then after the colon it reads, letting go of the need for certainty. Letting go of the need for certainty. If you see me look back, I'm trying to teach my kitten not to climb over the baby gate to come into the office because she's so small and I will not see her. And if I move this chair, I will straight up squish her. Let's not do that. So guidepost number 5, cultivating intuition and trusting faith, letting go of the need for certainty. Everything about this research process has pushed me in ways that I never imagined. This is especially true when it comes to topics like faith, intuition, and spirituality. When the importance of intuition and faith first emerged as key patterns in wholehearted living, I winced a little bit. Once again, I felt like my good friends, logic and reason, were under attack. I remember telling Steve, "Now it's intuition and faith. Can you believe it?" He replied, "I'm surprised that you're surprised. You work off of faith and your gut all of the time." He took me off guard with this comment. I sat down next to him and said, "Yeah, I know I'm a gut and faith kind of girl, but I guess I'm not very intuitive." Read this definition from the dictionary. Intuition is direct perception of truth or fact, independent of any reasoning process. Steve chuckled. So maybe the definition doesn't match what you're learning from the data. You'll write a new one. It won't be the first time. I spent a year focusing on intuition and faith. I interviewed and collected stories so that I could get my head and heart around what it means to cultivate intuition and trust faith. I was surprised by what I learned. Intuition. Intuition is not independent of any reasoning process. In fact, psychologists believe that intuition is a rapid-fire, unconscious associating process, like a mental puzzle. The brain makes an observation, scans its files, and matches the observation with existing memories, knowledge, and experiences. Once it puts together a series of matches, we get a gut on what we've observed. Sometimes our intuition or our gut tells us what we need to know. Other times, it actually steers us towards fact-finding and reasoning. As it turns out, intuition may be the quiet voice within, but that voice is not limited to one message. Sometimes our intuition whispers, "Follow your instincts." Other times it shouts, "You need to check this out. We don't have enough information." In my research, I found that what silences our intuitive voice is our need for certainty. Most of us are not very good at not knowing. We like sure things and guarantees so much that we don't pay attention to the outcome of our brain's matching process. Hey Glant, welcome in. For example, rather than respecting a strong internal instinct, we become fearful and look for assurances from others. Questions like, "What do you think? Should I do it? Do you think it's a good idea or do you think I'll regret it? What would you do?" A typical response to these survey questions is, I'm not sure what you should do. What does your gut say? And there it is. What does your gut say? We shake our head and say, I'm not sure. When the real answer is, I have no idea what my gut says. We haven't spoken in years. When we start polling people, it's often because we don't trust our own knowing. It feels too shaky and too uncertain. We want assurances and folks with whom we can share the blame if things don't pan out. I know all about this. I'm a professional pollster. It's hard for me to go it alone sometimes. When I'm making a difficult decision and feel disconnected from my intuition, I have a tendency to survey everyone around me. Ironically, since doing this research, surveying has become a red flag for me. It tells me that I'm feeling vulnerable about making a decision. As I mentioned earlier, if we learn to trust our intuition, it can tell us that we don't have a good instinct on something and we need more data. Another example of how our need for certainty sabotages our intuition is when we ignore our gut's warning to slow down, gather more information, or reality check our expectations. Things like, I'm just gonna do it. I don't care anymore. I'm tired of thinking about it. It's too stressful. I'd rather just do it than wait another second. I can't stand not knowing. When we charge headlong into big decisions, it may be because we don't know the answers. It may be because we don't want to know It may be because we don't want to know the answers that will emerge from doing due diligence. We know that fact finding might lead us away from what we think we want. I always tell myself, if I'm afraid to run the numbers or put pencil to paper, I shouldn't do it. When we just want to get the decision making over with, it's a good idea to ask ourselves whether we simply can't stand the vulnerability of being still long enough to think it through and make a mindful decision. So, as you can see, intuition isn't always about accessing the answers from within. Sometimes, when we tap into our inner wisdom, it tells us that we don't know enough to make a decision without more investigation. Here's the definition I crafted from my research. Intuition is not a single way of knowing. It's our ability to hold space for uncertainty and our willingness to trust the many ways we've developed knowledge and insight, including instinct, experience, faith, and reason. Oh, of course. So, what I really liked from this first little section on intuition is our intuition. I'm looking for the dang kitten. Our intuition is not independent of any reasoning process. Sometimes it tells us to trust our instincts, to trust instincts. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. That's a lot of cat sounds. Sometimes it tells us to trust our instincts, and other times it pushes us to gather more data. Other part was if I'm afraid to run the numbers or put pencil to paper, I shouldn't do it. Oh yeah, and then pulling other people about what should be done. Is a sign of feeling vulnerable. Hold on just a second, y'all. I'm gonna go put the kitten away real quick. The cat was just doing a little bit too much. Okay, so now about faith. I've come to realize that faith and reason are not natural enemies. It's our human need for certainty and our need to be. What was the reason? Because he's just being large. He's so much bigger than Zara. I mean, she's just a little teeny tiny little 5-week-old kitten. And he just be punking her sometimes. A little bit too much. I've come to realize that faith and reason are not natural enemies. It's our human need for certainty and our need to be right that have pitted faith and reason against each other in an almost reckless way. We force ourselves to choose and defend one way of knowing the world at the expense of the other. I understand that faith and reason can clash and create uncomfortable tensions. Those tensions play out in my life, and I can feel them in my bones. But this work has forced me to see that it's our fear of the unknown and our fear of being wrong that create most of our conflict and anxiety. We need both faith and reason to make meaning in an uncertain world. I can't tell you how many times I've heard the terms having faith and my faith in interviews with people who are living the wholehearted journey. At first, I thought that faith meant there's a reason for everything. I personally struggled with that because I'm not comfortable with using God or faith or spirituality to explain tragedy. It actually feels like substituting certainty for faith when people say, there's a reason for everything. But I quickly learned from the interviews that faith meant something else to these people. Here's how I define faith based on the research interviews. Faith is a place of mystery, where we find the courage to believe in what we cannot see and the strength to let go of our fear of uncertainty. The smile. I also learned that it's not always the scientists who struggle with faith and the religious who fully embrace uncertainty. Many forms of fundamentalism and extremism are about choosing certainty over faith. I love this from theologian Richard Rohr. My scientist friends have come up with things like the principles of uncertainty and dark holes. They're willing to live inside imagined hypotheses and theories. But many religious folks insist on answers that are always true. We love closure, resolution, and clarity, while thinking that we are a people of faith. How strange that the very word faith has come to mean its exact opposite. Faith is essential when we decide to live and love with our whole hearts in a world where most of us want assurances before we risk being vulnerable and getting hurt. To say, I'm going to engage wholeheartedly in my life requires believing without seeing. I remember reading somewhere else that faith and fear both require us to believe in something that we can't see. So we just have to choose which we're going to go with. So this section about faith. Our need, our human need for certainty is what drives Faith and reason against each other. But they're not opposites. Faith and fear both require us to believe in something we can't see. Which do you choose? Then living wholeheartedly requires believing without seeing. This page stay open. All right. So then the end of the guidepost is the three ways to dig deep. So dig deep by getting deliberate. Letting go of uncertainty is one of my greatest challenges. I even have a physical response to not knowing. It's anxiety and fear and vulnerability combined. That's when I have to get very quiet and still. With my busy life, that can mean hiding in the garage or driving around the block. Whatever it takes, I have to find a way to be still so I can hear what I'm saying. This reminds me of a conversation that my best friend had about meditation and her recognizing that even though she has been meditating every day for, I want to say she's over 400 or 500 days at this point, she started to realize the benefit of meditating for longer periods of time. So the pause is wonderful, 5, 10, 15-minute pause. But she challenged herself to sit and meditate for 45, 50 minutes, an hour, and realized how much clearer she could hear herself. So people saying, or even like Renee mentions in this book, I have no idea what my intuition is saying because we haven't spoken in years. Sitting in silence really gives us the opportunity to hear what we are saying, because typically we have the answers, but our life is full of all kinds of distractions and things that want our energy and want our attention. Everything from responsibilities that we actually have to pay attention to social media, to work, to all kinds of different things. It's so much more satisfying and so much more pleasurable to pay attention to those types of things than to sit in stillness, because pleasure itself can be a drug, you know what I mean? Comfort itself can be something that we want to have all the time, and sometimes sitting by yourself in silence is uncomfortable. Most of the time it's uncomfortable until you build that muscle and just keep practicing. Again, you don't have to start off with those, but I definitely encourage people, if you haven't done so, to practice unplugging for an hour or two a day, just not being around any devices. Maybe you're reading a book, maybe you're outside, maybe you put your phone or your devices on airplane mode or DND or whatever, and to take that time to just be with yourself and recognize how much more of your own thoughts, emotions, and feelings come to the surface when you give them the opportunity to do so. So the next step is to get inspired. The process of reclaiming my spiritual and faith life was not an easy one. Hence the 2007 breakdown. She crosses it out. Spiritual awakening. There's a quote that quite literally cracked open my heart. It's from a book by Anne Lamott. The opposite of faith is not doubt, but certainty. Her books about faith and grace inspire me. I'm inspired by and thankful for, When the Heart Waits by Sue Monk Kidd and Pema Chodron's Comfortable with Uncertainty. They saved me. And last, I absolutely love this quote from Paulo Coelho's. I know this author, but I'm not sure how to say his name. The Alchemist. Intuition is really a sudden immersion of the soul into the universal current of life, where the histories of all people are connected, and we are able to know everything because it's all written there. Get going. When I'm really scared or unsure, I need something right away to calm my cravings for certainty. For me, the Serenity Prayer does the trick. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. My mom has that prayer. Actually, I don't think she does anymore, but for years she had that prayer on her wall in her bathroom right next to the toilet. So every time I'd go and use my mom's restroom, I would see that quote and I'd read it every single time. Use this paper as a bookmark because I've already read these, but I want to be aware of what I've read out loud. So that's all for that guidepost. Again, that was Cultivating Intuition and Trusting Faith, Letting Go of the Need for Certainty. So my notes are on intuition. Intuition is not independent of any reasoning process. Sometimes it tells us to trust our instincts, and other times it pushes us to gather more data. And then I wrote down her quote, if I'm afraid to run the numbers or put a pencil to paper, I shouldn't do it. And lastly, polling or asking other people questions about what should be done is a sign of feeling vulnerable, which isn't a problem. It's just something that we need to be aware of, that it's like we're trying to pull ourselves in a different direction and we need to be still and get quiet. And the notes I have on faith, our human need for certainty is what drives faith and reason against each other, but they're not opposites. Faith and fear both require us to believe in something we cannot see. Which do you choose? And living wholeheartedly requires believing without seeing. And those books that she shared that helped her with uncertainty. Oops, I'm not typing anything. So we have And the Heart Waits. Sue Monk Kidd and Comfortable with Uncertainty by Pema Chodron. She definitely has accents over some of the letters in her name. But that's okay. So yeah, that's it for the read aloud for today.